and medium businesses play a crucial role in contributing towards the global GDP. The World Bank estimates that small businesses represent 90% of all businesses, and according to MasterCard, Sub-Saharan Africa alone has 44 million micro, small and medium enterprises. Data provided by the Rwanda Ministry of Trade and Industry shows that MSMEs in Rwanda account for 98% of all businesses, employing over 2.5 million people and contributing around 33% to the country's GDP. Thus, these important contributions make it worth to be noted.
Entrepreneurship is one of the Rwandans or country's strategy or country's policy to ensure that young people are finding themselves solutions. They are driving solutions. It goes without saying that Rwanda has a highest percentage of young people. So one of the way of even absorbing those skills and energy is to enable them, to use them by creating, coming up with new ideas, but also support them in terms of realizing those ideas. So we believe in it, and we see it as a potential to contribute hugely to the economy, and especially that even numbers show that currently the services are having a highest contribution to our GDP. So services include all those ideas of entrepreneurship. It includes all those innovation technology. It is unlike the conventional sectors like agriculture or mining or name it. The services includes and is driven by entrepreneurship, innovation, technology. So we see it as a very big potential now and in the future for economic development.
Africa's ecosystem is still very nascent, right? We're almost just at the beginning of our journey. What you're starting to see a lot more of, and I think this is where it's obviously started, was in very sort of early stage companies. But you're starting to see a move towards sort of larger growth stage companies and even a few exits here and there. But the more interesting element actually is that you're starting to see a lot of this being driven by capital that is coming from within the ecosystem itself, as opposed to there was a season where if you were looking to raise, it was really, really difficult to find venture type of capital to sort of from an early stage perspective within Africa. But more and more you're starting to find funds that are either fully domiciled in Africa in terms of their investment mandate, or you're starting to find that there's a growing LP base and investor base that is starting to put even private capital. And this is the result, or at least one of the signs of an ecosystem that is evolving, where people that started off at the beginning, like someone who built a business and has made a good exit somewhere down the line, is now reinvesting back into that ecosystem through whether it's angel investments or funding seed funds and so forth. So it's at an exciting point, I think, from a growth perspective. You'd almost look like almost a seed stage startup as well.
The journey to any entrepreneurial success starts with finding a gap in the market, but support in any form or shape does determine the longevity of said business. Keeping in line with global entrepreneurship, Norscan East Africa campus hosted the Norscan Africa Week, whereby connecting over 1,000 investors, business delegates and entrepreneurs at Africa's biggest hub for technology, innovation and entrepreneurship. In doing so, it allowed for key conversations to emerge.
Today is special. I've been to Kigali many times. And one of the reasons that Zambia is coming back to Kigali is that with the future of Africa is based on partnership and collaboration, learning from each other, sharing experiences. That is the only way we are going to transform Africa digitally. The last few trips that I've had in Rwanda, we look at what is it that we can harvest from Rwanda in the tech space and take to government in Zambia. So we have our revenue authority and their equivalent on Rwanda. We were struggling with accounting for value-added tax. It had always been a negative tax. When we came here with our team, they showed us how you can actually develop an electronic monetary system for value-added tax. As I speak, We are piloting it, and we're going to implement it from the 1st of January 2024. The Minister of Finance, in his budget for 2024, has pronounced himself that for the first time, value added tax will be a positive tax. But that comes about partnership and collaboration. Coming to Washington here, we have brought some of our innovators. And the reason we're bringing this team is, first of all, to meet with their fellow innovators here, to learn from each other, to share experiences, but also to create the opportunity for them to be connected to those with capital, the investors.
We're very happy to announce this $205 million equity growth fund that will be invested into the most promising African entrepreneurs. And this fund is backed by over 30 unicorn founders and other investors. I don't think that would have happened a few years ago, maybe. So many investors now see the challenges of Africa, but it also see the incredible opportunity, the business opportunity, going from 1 billion people to 4 billion people by the end of the century. So we hope that our activities, our ecosystems can really accelerate and make African entrepreneurs even more successful.
Support from incubation hubs such as this does help give innovators and budding entrepreneurs a fighting chance of success, but it's also worth noting why hubs like this attract investors and SMEs alike.
There are three things that NOSCEN looks at when we wanted to work with entrepreneurs or support entrepreneurs. One is the infrastructure. So the infrastructure is like a physical place like this where entrepreneurs can come and work. Perfect location, centrally located. You don't have to worry about connectivity. You don't have to worry about where will you host your guests if they come here. And this has been very important for us and very central to our activities in Rwanda, especially because we have seen so much demand. Because as you can see, we are still building, there's still new constructions coming up. That's because there's such a high demand for such kind of infrastructure. So besides the infrastructure, we also work a lot on networking. So for example, this event is an example of those networking opportunities we bring to entrepreneurs. So we were fortunate enough today to have His Excellency the President of the Republic joining us. We have ministers from different parts of different countries of Africa. And we also have many investors that came from all over the world to come meet these entrepreneurs. So that kind of networking opportunities, we also provide that either through events like this or even within the community itself for the people that are working from here. Thirdly, we work on capital. We can invest directly through our own funds. Most recently, you saw one that's called NOSCEN 22 that NOSCEN co-founded, and that is a fund of $205 million. But also we have even much other smaller funds that invest in earlier stage entrepreneurs. We also work with other investors because like here at NOSCEN in Kigali, we have more than 10 funds that invest in entrepreneurs from all different levels of their business ventures. From the moment you have just an idea, something you want to do, to the level where you need to raise millions of dollars. So we work either directly through our own funds or through partnerships with other funds or donors or development partners to bring the critical capital that's needed by entrepreneurs to be able to grow and scale their businesses.
Despite the importance of entrepreneurs, they face a score of challenges. And on top of that list of challenges is funding.
There's usually one top concern that every entrepreneur has: capital. But every investor wants to invest in less risky business. So of course, like as investors go through the process of conducting a due diligence of which entrepreneur to invest in, they also of course look at the entrepreneur themselves, the ideas they are working on, but also other factors that are outside of the entrepreneur's control, like is this safe? Is this a safe country that I'm going to put my money in? Is there growth opportunities for this entrepreneur? What is the opportunity for me, like if the company grows, me being able to, of course, like repatriate some of the profits. So all of these regulations, regulatory risk, also investors look at them. So we are lucky enough that in Rwanda, at least, we have a very progressive regulatory environment. We have been seeing recently Kigali International Finance Center making so easy for investors to set up funds here in Rwanda, but also investing in Rwandan companies. But also we are seeing from the national policies, from the Startup Act that is under development, we are seeing a lot of goodwill and support as justified by the presence of His Excellency, the President here. We are in a good place. So what needs to happen is just to attract more capital, but the majority of risks have already been managed.
The difference between what you start seeing, and you'll see this in terms of the number of funds that exist at each stage of the growth cycle. At a seed level, there's a lot more activity because it's still experimental. People are still finding the right sort of product market fit, finding the right markets to expand into, fine-tuning your actual product. There's a lot more activity in those early stages, but once you get into the growth stage, Series A to C and beyond, the number of opportunities that we even come across as a fund is much less than you would at a seed stage, and the number of funds that are also actively playing in the space is also significantly reduced. It gets harder as you go along. People assume that once you reach a certain stage that it's all sort of downhill in terms of like the complexity or the difficulty in terms of accessing things, but it actually gets harder. Running a startup versus running a more established company of two very different experiences, I think. And what we are still building quite a bit of is the experience and expertise to build businesses that are considered sort of large scale enterprise level, right? So we're learning a lot as an ecosystem, both from a founder perspective and also from an investor perspective.
I would say there needs to be equity now in terms of the needs assessment. First, you do a needs assessment and see, based on the sector, based on the level, what does this startup need? And that varies from business to business. And also having those startups in the room. Because sometimes if I'm an investor or if I'm a startup advisor, something, if I haven't been in that space, if I haven't lived that experience, there are things I do not get. And that's okay. So why not bring in those people who are going through that journey each and every day for them to share their lived experience and tell you clearly, this is what we need, this is what we believe would help. So by bringing in that information and bringing in the expertise from the other side, the investors, the VCs, then we can be able to give out something that actually works, but that's also customized to different needs of different businesses.
There's still a lot of funding gaps. Just yesterday we were having a conversation about how long it takes for the funding from investors to mature. From the time of application, it takes about 4 to 6 months for the funding to actually get in your bank account so that you can do what you need to do. And then another point maybe in the gap is faster pilot phases and faster pivots for the companies. I believe focusing on practical work and delivering practical solutions at a go is how we can mediate those gaps.
One of the main asks from investors is for innovators and entrepreneurs to identify gaps in the key sectors such as agriculture, technology, and healthcare systems.
Africa has everything the rest of the world has, even more. But when it comes to people, I think we should consider ourselves as equal with any other people anywhere in the world. Now, but there are also other resources other than just people that we can tap into and grow and connect with the rest of the world for our own success, but also for the success of the rest of the world. So the investors need just not to look at Africa as a big market, which it is, but also a thriving people, society, that to a great extent will match or even supersede actually what exists elsewhere in the world. So the investors need to consider that. And of course, the next consideration for any investor is you invest for a purpose. And is that purpose going to be served? Is the profit you want to and the growth you want to make out of that going to happen? I think I can say it is guaranteed that it will happen.
There is also a lot that we can do by opening up some of our collaborative opportunities across different markets and create a market that is big enough for us to scale. If you looked at a single country in Francophone West Africa, for instance, the potential that you would see coming out of it in terms of like, hey, is this a market that is big enough for me to build a unicorn in as a founder or even as an investor in terms of looking at market size and opportunity? The answer would often be no, right? Depending on what you're doing, the market in a single country is potentially limited. But what Francophone West Africa has the advantage of is that to some extent there's a lot of overlap, right? Whether it's the fact that from a regulatory perspective, there's a more centralized way of organizing themselves. There is a currency that is used commonly across the different markets. There is a language that is used even commonly across the different countries that you speak of in that region. And so when you start looking at an opportunity to expand, suddenly it's like, hey, I don't have to jump the barriers of trying to figure out the regulatory environment from country to country because I've already understood the one country and there's a lot of overlap in which gives me the advantage to then start looking at this as one big ecosystem.
When we started, I have a co-founder, he's Kenyan, and he has an NCDs-based NGO back in Kenya. So we met through an entrepreneurship program, Jasiri, and at the moment I wanted to do a one-stop center for everything NCDs. And he wanted to do something like a mobile clinic. So we're like, let's have a conversation, let's see if we can join hands and see what comes out. So we went through like 1,000 of ideas, but one thing we're on the same page is that we didn't want to do what the traditional healthcare system looks like. So we did the market research, and one of the reasons that came up of why people don't do checkups or don't even care as part of the lack of information, it's also the time and then the availability. If I want to get my blood pressure checked, I have to leave my home, go to a hospital, go through all those waiting lines to get a basic screening like blood pressure or blood sugar. So we're like, how tech came in, tech allows you to provide healthcare services without being there in person. It cuts down on the time, it brings accessibility to the unserved communities. So we like wanted to do something tech, and we're also focusing on young people. So we wanted to bring something that young people can relate to through the application by just putting in your height, your weight. It's able to tell you your BMI, give you the normal range, let you know what that actually means. If you need follow-up, if you need additional help on top of that. And that has allowed us to reach the untapped market.
So our one-stop center offers co-working spaces for designers, fashion entrepreneurs, or creative enthusiasts. It offers retail opportunities, and we also produce on behalf of designers. So it's kind of a 3-in-1 where people get to collaborate, come together, ideate, and even learn and research about different opportunities and explore synergy. The motivating problem was Africa's low global manufacturing value. So as Africa, we produce only 2% of what the world consumes. And it's really so demoralizing to think that a continent that is so gifted is not fulfilling its true potential. And so we wanted to de-isolate the market, de-isolate the ideas, and bring them all together in one functional ecosystem so that that collaboration can actually be a proactive output.
On the flip side of the mountain of challenges entrepreneurs face, is the support welcomed from the Rwandan government and private sector like Norscan East Africa.
We've been very fortunate to have expert coaches who have guided us along the way to really connect with the problem and connect with the customers. And we've been so motivated by the Made in Rwanda policy, which is really what we aim to boost at all costs. In 2016, when Rwanda stayed its ground on the ban of import of second-hand clothes, it really motivated the industry and allowed us 5 years, 6 years later to create a solution for the innovators. Yeah.
So I'd say we've gotten a lot of support, and we're able to still be standing, or the doors to be still open at this point because of all the support we've gotten. So when NOSCAN opened, we're actually one of the first cohort of the Health Tech Hub by the Novartis Foundation, and having that community of people who really understand health tech, they connect us to health tech experts as mentors. Went through a program by the Bridge for Billions, and every time they're trying to connect you to the right people. So we've been able to leverage on the connections they already have, especially with government institutions.
Empowering SMEs as a key driver towards economic growth and employment with support also means providing them with much needed advice. In doing so, we'll help them to pave the way for a brighter future for their employees, whilst unlocking new opportunities for both entrepreneurs and investors alike.
Will enable us to achieve what we want to achieve. In the same way, us doesn't mean just particularly Rwandans. It means Africans, it means people from anywhere else in the world who want to invest with us or do business with us. And that thinking, therefore, provides for an environment that lowers the risk anybody would face when they have taken chance with us and believed in us that we can do things like that and do as expected in terms of holding each other's hand and moving forward.
The biggest problem is to have an idea that is properly thought through. An idea that is put in the digital funnels, tested. An idea that has got legs. But much more important, the young people should have patience and perseverance. Just because you've got a smart idea today, you cannot invoice tomorrow. It takes time. Patience for the idea to be able to turn into an invoice. My kids, young innovators, just exercise a lot of patience, persevere, hard work. It doesn't pay off. But always when you are in that space, share your struggles with your fellow kids. You won't know who will bring, unlock the challenges that are facing.
We strongly believe that entrepreneurs are the best chance, are the best opportunity we have as Africa to solve some of the biggest challenges we have. So I've tried many other models and we have seen very limited impact, as we all know. But we are seeing a lot of entrepreneurs creating the solutions themselves, not waiting for solutions to come from somewhere else, from a donor somewhere, from a project somewhere, but the entrepreneurs who are living on a daily basis those challenges, tackling them head on to build the solutions that will help us solve those issues. So by betting on those entrepreneurs, by bringing them the resources they need, we believe that we have a shot of solving the big challenges we have on this continent, from healthcare to financial inclusion to climate change to food security and several other challenges that we all know we are facing collectively.
Yeah, so I think the number one thing startups need to do in the very early phase is to find a great product market fit. So they need to be enabled that their product or solution are actually solving a specific need for their customers. And even better, if they can solve a need that the customers are willing to pay for. So that's the number one, I think. And if you're able to get that and you have a good enough big market, I think the investors will certainly come.
I think that they are, and one of the proof is even what we've seen here. You can see the number of young people who are here, and these are people who are interested, who are having projects in that. Another example is even seeing now the number of young people that approach, for example, the BDF, the Business Development Fund, which is a fund that is created to drive entrepreneurship for young people and also for women. When you see how the number is increasing, you see it gives you an example of how young people are committed. And also, the drive and the eagerness of the youth, the young people, is not only in innovation and technology. We've seen so many young people now committing even in agriculture, but in modernized agriculture. So all those are signals that the young people are really driving and are really committing into themselves, and they're giving it time and consideration it's needed.
The reality of the odds of making it as a startup, just generally, like the stats are still something like 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 or something, where the likelihood, to be fair, of failing as a startup is much higher than it is of succeeding. And that is no different in an African context as well. I find Africans are very, very creative, right? We're problem-solving people. And so you find a lot of solutions popping up everywhere. Whether it's on a very sort of small scale and you're solving for a very localized community, or you're thinking, hey, I want to take this globally and set a new standard in how payments are made or supply chains are developed and so forth. There are always solutions popping up everywhere all the time.
If anybody anywhere in this world is going to be to do something that is worthwhile, anything of any value, it's not going to be without risk. So you have got to choose. Do you take the risk in trying to achieve something of a very high value, or do you not take the risk and end up doing nothing and being nothing? So you've got to consider these things. So we don't take the risk just for the sake of it. We take risk where risk must be taken that is going to give us that value in what we want to achieve, and therefore the two are correlated.